Today we are joined by the legend himself, Douglas Klauba. Many Phantom fans will know Douglas from his beyond amazing Phantom artworks from Moonstone Publishing and his recent artwork for the 2022 Phantom Diary from Malon Publishing. And in question number one, we're going to be talking about when you were growing up, were you a fan of the Phantom?
Hi, Brad. Yes, I was a fan of the Phantom. Being a young artist, going through all the bookstores and used bookstores, I would try to find as much of comic books and costume crime fighters that I could find. And I always saw the Gold Key or the Dell covers, and I initially didn't buy them because they were painted covers and they reminded me of paperbacks, but I was more interested in a traditional comic book looking superhero. So the Phantom was always something that I was always curious about, and it was quite mysterious to me. And it wasn't until I was reading a little bit of the strip in the newspaper, mostly when I'd visit my grandparents. And in one of our general stores, a Five and Dime, had a sticker sheet of the King Features characters on them. It had Prince Valiant and Mandrake, and they had the Phantom, aside from other of the funnier cartoon characters from King Features. And I saw the Phantom on there. Yeah. And so I bought the sticker sheet because the Phantom was on it, because to me, it was the only superhero on it. But I've been a lifelong King Features fan. I'm a huge Prince Valiant fan. I'm a huge Flash Gordon fan. And it only makes sense that I would also be a Phantom fan. So it wasn't until like a used book fair in my neighborhood where somebody had a box of older comic books that I saw some of the Phantom comics that I decided to pick some of those up. And they were cheaper than some of the other ones that I remember. And I don't know the reason why they were cheaper. Unless it was my imagination that they were cheaper, but I ended up buying them, and that was my introduction. It was actually the Charlton comics with the Don Newton work, and
cool.
Yeah,
his artworks on the original covers before he passed away were awesome. The one where there's it's a greenish background. I can't really remember it, but it's sort of like a professor type spy type thing.
Yes.
The main evil character is like I would say on the left side of the image, and it's green and it's awesome.
Yes, I know. And that was one of the ones that I probably bought at the time, although later on I ended up, buying as many as I could much later on when I really became a diehard comic book collector. I grew up mostly reading, Batman, Spider-Man. But my very first interest in comics wasn't even superheroes. It was mostly adventure and horror stuff that were published in a series called Classics Illustrated that actually my father and my uncles used to talk about all the time. And they gave me some of their copies that it would pass down to me. So I was more of a Treasure Island fan, Three Musketeer fan. So I mean, the Phantom really fits into my taste in adventure. So between that and my love for superheroes and comic book heroes, and of course the golden age heroes like pulp magazines, the Phantom really fit inside my interest at that time. So yeah, I mean, I've been a Phantom fan for a while, and it was really a shock and surprise when Moonstone ended up calling me to do some of the work on the covers. So, and it was a dream fulfilled, really.
I haven't, in my collection of Phantom comics, I haven't really got many of the Moonstone books, but the covers and I haven't really read many of their stories, but the covers are always very, very cool.
Oh, well, I did some of them, not all of them, but yeah, I started out at Moonstone after they started doing when they introduced color comics into their publishing, and I was doing a lot of their covers. Like I started out with doing an Invisible Man cover, then I ended up doing Kolchak the Night Stalker, and I was doing the crime covers, and it was all stuff that I really like to do, and it really helped that I was like in a close proximity to the editor's office in the publisher's office, Joe Gentile's office. So, you know, because I was so close, he can call me up and know that I can get something finished and brought to the office pretty quickly. So a lot of it had to do with me being in that situation, almost like in the right place at the right time. And then when I saw that they were launching the Phantom as a monthly, I asked Joe if there was any opportunities there for me. And he said that at the time, no, because he had already assigned the covers to another artist.
Yeah.
And then a couple months later, he called and said, "Hey, are you still interested in doing those covers? Because I have something that I'm actually in a jam about." And that was the trade paperback cover that I ended up doing. Did you know that one, right, Brad? With the guns crossed?
I think so.
Yeah, it's the one with the guns crossed and the lightning behind him.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just a straight on view. That was the first one I did for Moonstone. And, you know, basically got a phone call on a Sunday afternoon. I remember it well because it was a Sunday. And my wife said, "Oh, Joe's on the phone." And I said, "Oh, what's going on?" And Joe said, "Doug, I'm kind of in a jam. I've got, I'm ready to go to press. I'm almost ready to go to press and I don't have a cover." And I said, "What is it for?" And he goes, "It's for the Phantom." And I just about said, "When do you need it?" I'm thinking like he'll need it like tomorrow. And he goes, "Oh, I'll need it in like maybe 2 weeks." And I said, "I got it, Joe. I'll do it." And it was, for him, it was a sigh of relief that he knew that I would get it finished and sent over to the office pretty quickly. To me, it was a sign of relief because I'm said, finally, I'm going to do a Phantom cover. You know, so he, you know, a lot of ways he felt like I was doing him a big favor, but really in the long run, he did me a huge favor, and I can't thank him enough, really. But he told me, he goes, "I'm literally looking for something iconic." You know how editors would be. "I want something iconic. I want something that nobody's ever seen before. I want it to, you know, look like the stuff that you've been doing for Moonstone. Just do what you think is right for that." So yeah, so that's how it all happened. It all took off from there.
Did you ever get to meet Mike Bullock?
I did get to meet Mike Bullock. We met at a Chicago comic book convention called C2E2, and it was at the time when he was doing the Phantom, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was, and it was great meeting Mike. We've spoken on the phone many times since over the years. He's one of those guys that once you meet him and you talk to him, you're like you're friends forever. And even bringing up his name right now makes me feel like I should give him a call just to say hey and how you're doing, because most of the time these days it's mostly a hello or a like on Facebook,
Yeah.
and never a phone. We haven't talked in maybe at least a few years now on the phone. But yeah, I did get a chance to meet Mike. I got to meet Mike. I got to meet Ben Robb, who worked on some of the earlier Phantom stories at Moonstone, and then some of the artists as well that worked with Moonstone.
Did you ever get to meet Reno Menenguis? He's in.
No, I did not.
I sent him a few questions a year or two back, and he's pretty cool. He's awesome.
That's good. I don't think I've ever met somebody associated with a Phantom that wasn't cool. You know, the one thing I do love about the Phantom community is that we're all very enthusiastic about the character, and it's almost like we're all in it together. You know, you're right. We're all making sure that he stays alive, and the
Yeah.
next Phantom is going to always come forth.
Yeah. In question number 2, when you used to do covers for Moonstone Publishing, how did you construct the covers and how long did they take?
Okay, so normally what I do is I take out my sketchbook, and I'm usually given an email about, you know, you got to do the cover for the next Phantom, and the name of the story is, you know, whatever the mark of sometimes sometimes there's one, but sometimes there's like the story's not finished, we're still kind of working it out, but this is what I think is going to happen. And then what I do is I end up doing like little thumbnail sketches of cover ideas. And I don't think I have any in this particular book. Well, there's certain little Phantom scribbles and doodles in here, and you probably can't see it that well, but that's how I start. I'll start out by just thinking of ideas. Sometimes I write them down next to the drawings, but I do like little pencil thumbnails in it, and I'm concentrating on design, composition, and shapes of with the characters in there. And then from there, I'll find something that I like, at least at the time when I was working at Moonstone. I'll find something that I liked, and I'll do a better drawing of it. I'll actually do a real drawing of it and then send it to my editor. And then I'd get feedback, or I would get mostly an approval from them, and then saying, okay, we approved it. We're sending it over to King Features for them to give us the thumbs up. And once we hear from them, you can start. It got to a point where it was mostly a formality in a lot of ways, because once I sent it to Moonstone, I knew what they were looking for, because we were on the same page in a lot of ways. So once I sent it to them, and Joe or Dave would say, it looks good, go ahead. We're gonna send it over to King Features. Sometimes it took them a while to get back, but we were on a schedule and I didn't want to wait. So I would start working on the actual painting then. And then, so let's see what I have, right? I have an example of one of my drawings.
Because I've heard in some podcasts that Chronicle Chamber has done to do with Jermaine Parker, and when he's only had, I think, one discussion with a person from King Features, but they've gotten with their stories, the stories of the Phantom. I think that's to do with Phantom and stories. They've got a bit stricter on things that they need to have approved on, I think.
Okay.
Along those lines.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it is their property and they want to protect it.
Yeah.
And at the time, the person that was in charge of the Phantom, we had exchanged emails. So he gave me the rundown. Make sure you don't do this. Well, a lot of it was like, Doug, I like what you're doing. I trust what you're doing, but there are some guidelines. This is what we're looking for out of the Phantom. This is who he is. This is what we don't want to portray him as. Okay.
Dark.
So that's
Dark
I mean, they don't want him to be the Punisher, like the
Yeah.
Marvel's Punisher character. They don't want him to be some sort of dark vigilante. And I completely understood that, because I'm actually probably a bigger fan of like the Cy Berry Phantoms, and even earlier ones like Ray Moore, the earlier comic strip stuff, because I'm just a huge Golden Age. There you go.
This series, it has Cy Barry's work in it, and they published Budget. It was published in 1985, King Features Syndicate Inc., and it says, the best of the Phantom, what dangers lurk at every turn of the next 80 pages of the Phantom. I think this had stuff to do with the Budget books that were published in Australia around that time, and I have the entire series, and it's good. I just wanted to show that.
Yeah, I mean, and I love those sort of collections like that. I'm a big fan of that. I love just getting a mix of the stories, so you're able to see a lot of different viewpoints of it. But yeah, that's how I really started out working on a cover, and then from there, I would take photographs for references. I would draw it up on my illustration board, and I paint with acrylics. And afterwards, I would get a scan of the painting, and then I would get it prepared digitally. So I'd color correct it and make sure that everything's squared and the right exposure. And I would send the file off to Moonstone, and then they would put it on their covers. So that took about.
You would work traditionally and then go to digitally.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's the way I did it, and never really touched it digitally, aside from just color correcting, or if there's like some dust on it, remove some of the dust from the scan, and that usually took me maybe 5 to 7 days. So usually it took me a week. From a thumbnail sketch to a drawing usually took me 3 days, and then from the drawing to the finished took me anywhere from 3 to 4 days. So, 2 to 4 days. So in the end, it would be like 5 to 7 days then to do a cover. That's why when Joe said that he needed it right away for that trade paperback, I was thinking, I'd have to stop what I'm doing, all the other projects, in order to get it finished by next weekend. But he said I'd have like I think it was like 2 weeks or a little bit longer than that to get that finished. So sometimes he gave me, 2 weeks to get something finished. Sometimes it was a week, and then sometimes I had a month to have something turn in. And it was always like, we need it next month. And he'd never say the date. It was just like,
We
so if
need this certain point. It's like when Doc goes to Marty McFly. Come on, Marty, we're going into the Back to the Future.
exactly, it's like, what part of the future?
Yeah.
you know and so it was like, we need it like mid-March. Well, mid-March is a nice stretch of a week. Is it the 15th of March, or is it the 12th, or is it the 18th? And he'd say, sure, whatever, just I need it by mid-March. So it always worked out. It was fun, and I loved working with Moonstone at that time, and we had a great rapport. And I still talk to Joe pretty regularly, and some of the creators that worked on the series.
In question number 3, before you put pen to paper or canvas, do you have an ideal pose before you go to work? That's sort of the same question as number 2.
Well, it is sort of the same question, but I can elaborate on it. I do try to find a really nice pose, and I try to think of a pose that I don't think is a very regular comic book pose for the most part. At least that's what I was thinking at the time. Or maybe a pose that I feel really reflects the Phantom in the synopsis or the way the story is. What would sum up what's going on? What would sum up the action? So I have to think of that pose. So I would sketch it out first,
Yeah.
and then after I find the pose that I'm looking for, I'll do a little bit more research on the figure and the anatomy, and then even take a photo of a model. I had an acquaintance at that time that I would call on to help pose.
Yeah.
And
With references.
then I would just use that to get my drawing down, and I would do all my fine tuning and make sure it looks correct. But for the most part, yeah, I'm always looking and thinking about what would be a really cool Phantom pose.
Okay.
Yeah,
You have
definitely.
you have a lot of books in the background. Do you ever, when you looking to paint something or when you're looking to draw something, do you ever go to your range of books over in the background and try and get inspired by them and then use that
Abs-
to go onto pen and paper?
Absolutely. It's part of the luxury of this being what I do for a living. I get to look at art books, and I get to look at things that make me happy. I look at art books and I see what other artists have done in the past. And there's certain artists that I love and I follow, and they inspire me. They inspire me to do good work. They inspire me to come up with creative things, and then sometimes looking at something sparks an idea. So so a lot of times, if something's not flowing, I'll open up a book, something that, a lot of it has to do with maybe how my day's going, how I feel, my mood, or just I want to do the artwork that maybe looks a little bit more like this kind of art. Like one of the Phantom covers, I had the Phantom and Devil walking through the jungle, and in the background was the giant skull cave, and the colors were a little bit more orangey in the background, and the jungle was green. And I wanted it to look a little bit more like a old pulp magazine cover, or maybe even a Don Newton cover.
Yeah.
So I would open up a book on pulp art, and I would look at a lot of the way the artists drew the figures and the colors that they used. So I would use that as inspiration.
In question number 4, when Moonstone Publishing were making Phantom comics, and then because a lot of Phantom fans enjoyed Moonstone when they were making their Phantom comics, and then when they suddenly stopped making the comics, do you have any stories about Moonstone and when they stopped making Phantom comics for Phantom fans?
Yeah,
Or
I
fans of
actually,
their...
yeah, I was, funny enough, I was doing work for Dynamite Entertainment at the time, and I was working on Project Superpowers with Alex Ross, and I was at a Chicago comic book convention here called Wizard World, and I was on the Phantom panel, and not the Phantom panel. I was on the Dynamite panel, and I was on the panel with the publisher and my editor at Dynamite. And I think I was the only artist on the panel. And the promise of the panel was to talk about what's in store for their current
Yeah.
titles, and they were going to
What's
make a big
new?
announcement, and
Yeah.
nobody knew what the announcement was.
Yeah.
And they made the announcement on the stage with me there, and they said, "Well, we just want to let you know that we just acquired the license for the Phantom."
What was like the
And
reaction after they said that?
well, my reaction was just kind of like,
Hang on.
I felt like I got slapped in the side of the head, and I felt like, what am I doing up here now? But I felt like, okay, well, these guys are pretty cool. They know what they're doing, and they went on to talk about what their plans were for the Phantom, and they said that Alex Ross was going to be involved, and their version of the Phantom, and Alex is a friend of mine, so I know I would be able to talk to him about what was going on. So I just felt like, let's see how this plays out. And then, of course, in the panel, they said, and of course, we have, one of the Phantom cover artists that is at Moonstone, and maybe we'll be lucky enough to have Doug do Phantom covers for us as well. So I heard that in the panel, and I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. We'll go along with that. And then news traveled from that panel all the way to the Moonstone booth. And I walked
Like,
over to the Moonstone booth and I said, Joe, I had no idea. He's like, what's going on here? So they had to work it out on their own. But basically, King Features sold Dynamite the same publishing rights as Moonstone had. And Moonstone had no intention of giving it up. But then Moonstone and Dynamite negotiated like a passing of the torch, so to say. And that's how that occurred. And everything was pretty amicable and friendly. And of course, I never did get a chance to do a Phantom cover for Dynamite, but that's all well and good, because when Alex Ross is doing covers, I would rather sit back and watch all the magic that he can do for it.
radio. In question number 5, last year, Malon Publishing made a 2022 Phantom Diary and other lines of Phantom-related merchandise. What was the process from receiving the job, doing the artwork, and then having Phantom fans love the piece you did for the 2022 line from Malon Publishing? And last year, I received this on my birthday, and it was a print for the.
Oh,
It was the print that came with the diary,
with the diary, yeah.
and
Um,
I shared this on Instagram in December, and you commented on it.
yeah, yeah. It was just an extreme honor for me to do something with Malin Publishing. They had contacted me over the years to use some of my, the Moonstone artwork in the
Yeah,
diaries. So I've gotten to be quite friendly with Nola over at Malin Publishing, and then he approached me, a few years back about this being a possibility, about me doing a commission cover, and I was absolutely thrilled. And I was really happy to hear the response from the Phantom fans that were following, saying, Doug, we're really looking forward to a new piece of Phantom cover art from you. So I really was like really happy to hear that. Wow, this is nice that people still like my paintings and they like my rendition of the Phantom. So it was a great honor to do that. And then he used my other painting of the Oath inside as a
yeah,
frontispiece. So yeah, it was a thrill for me again to work with Malin Publishing.
yeah. Because by the time this and a few other things got listed on few publications' website, yeah, it went pretty fast and it is now sold out. So
Okay, good.
yeah.
That's good. I didn't know that. Good to hear.
In my last question, question number 6 talks about, do you have any current work you're able to talk about or past artworks you have there to show our audience?
In regards to the Phantom, I don't have any new projects in the works. There's a couple that are in discussion at the moment, but
But you're
nothing
not allowed to
concrete.
talk.
Well, there's really nothing to say. I mean, it's
Yeah,
almost like me saying, yeah, there's a possibility of this and that. It doesn't really, there's no legs to it yet. The only thing I can say is that I'm actively doing new paintings of the Phantom, and when I do those, Phantom fans usually purchase them for me right off the bat. So there's a few collectors that contact me pretty
Yeah.
regularly to see if there's something in the works. Like I said earlier, Brad, I have some drawings that I have laying around that eventually will be a painting that I do if I look at it long enough. And I also have done some sketch covers, some painted sketch covers for some of the fans that were commissions. But aside from some of the other projects that I currently work on, I don't really have anything to announce with the Phantom yet. I do a lot of pulp magazine adventure type illustrations. I work pretty regularly with Edgar Rice Burroughs characters like Tarzan and John Carter of Mars, and some other pulp related characters. And recently I finished working on an Apple TV Studios production that will stream sometime later this year or early next year, a hard-boiled detective series that I did some paintings for that will be on screen. So I'm waiting for that to come about. But I keep myself pretty busy with stuff. I keep myself pretty busy trying to think of new Phantom artwork. I will say that I do have like a fan club collectible coin that was just made, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like. It's my trade paperback cover design. They put it on a coin, so I'm hoping to see that next month. So that's about the newest thing that I could share regarding the Phantom.
Do you have like any pulp? Are you able to show any pulp covers or artworks that you have there?
You know what? I have I have a couple things up here on my screen here. I've got some Phantom sketches, and I have one of the pulp covers that I have here. Can I share?
Because I always like how you see a pulp cover, and I have a very big interest in like photography, and I like seeing how pulp covers look in black and white, and they're cool.
Okay, so this is a recent pulp cover that I did that was published, and this was a character called the Midnight Guardian.
So
This is a Phantom drawing that I've done that hasn't been painted, but something that I'm working on.
awesome.
And that one here.
Yeah.
These are the recent ones that I've done over the last couple of years. And this was for the Bushfire book that I did. I did a piece for.
Yeah, I've got that Bushfire book.
Yeah, and then
It's pretty cool.
yeah, I love that.
There's a lot of emotion in that picture.
Yeah, thank you. This is something that was for one of the trading cards from Glenn Ford. That was the original drawing. And this what you might find interesting. This was one of the sketch covers that I did. That was the inspiration for the Malin cover. Then I had come up with that pose, and I ended up liking it enough to say, hey, I'm going to do a bigger version of that. And that's how that came about. So yeah, that's about that's everything that's on my desktop at the moment in regards to.
So you talked about question number 6, and I think we finished that.
Yeah.
So do you have like a website where Phantom fans can visit, or if you have commissions they might want to get in touch with you about?
Yeah, anybody's welcome to my website, douglasklauba.com. It's up now, but it will be getting a revamp later in the year. Well, I should say later in the year. It's early in the year now, so like not for a few months, many months actually.
Yeah.
People can regularly see a lot of my newer work on my Instagram, which is just Douglas Klauba, all one word. You can always find me on Facebook, which a lot of Phantom fans have connected with me on Facebook. That's where anybody can message me either on Facebook or on Instagram, and that's where I actually communicate with a lot of friends from Australia and India that are Phantom fans. They'll message me through Facebook, so those are pretty good places to connect with me. But please, if you're able to join and connect with me at Instagram, I'd appreciate it. And feel free to also join in over at Facebook, which I'm on there usually about once a week, if anything. But that's just because of my busy schedule.
Yeah. Are you ever thinking to come to Australia and go to Supernova at
I
any
would, I would,
time?
yeah, I would absolutely love to come to Supernova. And many years ago when I was working on the Moonstone series, I was approached by Supernova about being a guest at a couple of the shows.
Yeah.
And I probably still even have the business card from the gentleman who approached me at the convention, but they never followed up with me on that.
Yeah.
So if that occurs, I would gladly accept that. And I do hope that I can come to Australia sometime in the future, very soon, if not for Supernova, for some other, reason,
Yeah.
visiting some of the friends there and just having a nice get together would be
Yeah.
just as enjoyable for me. But yeah, I would love to be at a Supernova.
Because I go to them and they always enjoy them and they're always good. So you've talked about where people can, if they have any further questions, that where they can find you, which is Facebook and Instagram. And now I would like to thank you for joining me on my podcast. And if you would like to say something to Phantom fans to end our conversation, you can.
Well, I would, first like to say thanks to you, Brad, for inviting me onto your podcast. I enjoyed our conversation and getting to meet you. I want to thank all of the Phantom fans that are watching or are interested in this interview. I'm still very happy to know that you like my work in the past and that you are always anxious to see what I am currently working on. And for those who do send me messages, I thank you for those inquiries. And aside from me wanting to do more Phantom artwork just for my own enjoyment, it wouldn't be nearly as exciting if there wasn't a great audience, especially the
Yeah.
Australian audience. So I thank you for really accepting me, me as one of those artists that you look forward to seeing artwork from.
If you would like to subscribe to Phantom Cave Reviews, you can if you want to. And as always, keep Phantom Caving. And thank you, Douglas Klauba, for joining us on this podcast episode. And if you wanted to check out Douglas Klauba's artwork, you can always visit his website and on Facebook and Instagram where he is. And as always, thank